I was a bank teller accused of stealing until I caught the manager on hidden camera. But that moment of vindication was still 3 months of hell away when Douglas Kellerman called me into his office on that Tuesday morning, his face wearing the satisfied expression of a man about to destroy someone's life. The fluorescent light above his desk flickered intermittently, casting shadows that danced across the stack of papers he'd arranged with theatrical precision. My employee file sat open, red marks bleeding across performance reviews that had been stellar just weeks before. The security footage timestamp glowed on his monitor. 3:47 p.m. yesterday, my hands moving across the cash drawer. My back turned to the camera for exactly 43 seconds. Kellerman's fingers drummed against his desk, each tap marking time like a countdown to execution. The man had always carried himself with the bloated confidence of someone who'd clawed his way up from teller to branch manager through 20 years of small cruelties and careful betrayals. His suit was too expensive for his salary. His watch caught the light with deliberate ostentation, the kind of details I'd never noticed before this moment, when every fiber of my being was cataloging evidence of the trap closing around me. He gestured toward the monitor without looking at me. The footage showed my station, the cash drawer sliding open, my hands reaching inside. Then the angle shifted, my body blocking the camera's view for those crucial seconds. When I stepped aside, the drawer closed. Clean, professional, damning. The security guard shifted behind me, his hand resting on his radio. Maria from HR sat in the corner, her pen poised over a termination form that had clearly been prepared before I'd even entered the room. The smell of burnt coffee and institutional disinfectant hung in the air, mixing with the metallic taste of adrenaline flooding my mouth. Kellerman's eyes met mine for the first time since I'd sat down. In them, I saw something that made my blood turn to ice. Satisfaction. Not disappointment. Not regret. Pure, undiluted satisfaction. This wasn't about stolen money. This was personal. The realization hit me like a physical blow. 3 weeks ago, I'd filed a formal complaint about the discrepancies I'd noticed in the daily cash reconciliation reports. Numbers that didn't add up. Deposits that disappeared from the system only to reappear days later. I documented everything, followed proper channels, trusted the system to work. Kellerman had thanked me for my diligence, promised to look into it personally, assured me that integrity like mine was what made the bank strong. Now he was framing me for theft. The mathematical precision of it was almost beautiful. The missing $4,000 from yesterday's deposits. The security footage showing me alone at my station during the critical window. The anonymous tip that had prompted the investigation. A tip that had somehow included details only someone with administrative access could know. My hands remained steady as Kellerman slid the resignation letter across the desk. The alternative, he indicated with a subtle nod toward the security guard, was police involvement, criminal charges, a career in banking permanently destroyed. The choice he seemed to suggest with that serpentine smile was mine. I signed the letter. The pen felt heavier than it should have, each stroke of my name carving away 18 months of perfect attendance, commendations for customer service, and the naive belief that competence and honesty mattered in the corporate world. The security guard escorted me to my station to collect my personal items. My co-workers watched from their positions, some with genuine sympathy, others with the morbid curiosity of witnessing a public execution. Kellerman observed from his office doorway, arms crossed, savoring his victory. I packed my coffee mug, my family photos, the small cactus my daughter had given me. My fingers brushed against the edge of my desk drawer, where I'd kept my backup phone charger. The drawer stuck slightly as it always had, a tiny imperfection that required just the right pressure to open properly. That's when the first seed of an idea took root. The following morning, I sat in my kitchen staring at the termination letter, the words blurring together through the haze of sleepless rage. My wife had stopped asking questions after the third time I'd explained what happened. My teenage daughter watched me from the doorway, unsure whether to offer comfort or give me space. The silence in the house felt heavier than the accusations, but beneath the humiliation and anger, something colder was crystallizing. Kellerman had made one crucial mistake. He'd assumed I would disappear quietly, too broken and intimidated to fight back. He'd underestimated the fury of a man with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. I opened my laptop and began researching. The beauty of modern surveillance technology is its accessibility. Devices smaller than a coin, with battery life measured in weeks. Wireless transmission capabilities that could stream directly to cloud storage. All available for purchase with overnight shipping, no questions asked. I studied the bank's layout from memory, sketching every detail on graph paper with the precision of an architect. The teller stations, the manager's office, the break room, the vault entrance. Camera positions, blind spots, traffic patterns. I'd worked there long enough to know exactly when Kellerman took his smoke breaks, when the cleaning crew arrived, which security protocols were followed religiously and which were treated as suggestions. The plan began taking shape with mechanical precision. Not revenge, that was too emotional, too sloppy. This would be justice. Methodical, irrefutable, devastating. The first phase required patience. For 2 weeks, I maintained the routine of a man looking for work. I updated my resume, filled out applications, attended interviews for positions I had no intention of accepting. I needed the documentation, the paper trail of someone moving forward with their life. Kellerman had to believe he'd won. Meanwhile, I conducted surveillance of my own. The bank's shift schedules, delivery patterns, when Kellerman arrived and departed. His lunch routines, his meetings, his habits. The man was a creature of predictable patterns which would make him easy to anticipate. Most importantly, I tracked his after-hours visits to the bank. Kellerman had a key card that granted him access outside business hours, a privilege that came with his position and one he exercised with suspicious frequency. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, his sedan appeared in the parking lot around 8 p.m. He'd stay for exactly 90 minutes, then leave. Official business, according to the schedule posted for employees. Administrative work that required concentration away from daily operations. But I'd seen the cash reconciliation reports. I knew the patterns of discrepancies. And now I understood exactly what Kellerman was doing during those private sessions. The hardware arrived in unmarked packages spread across a week. Miniature cameras with 4K resolution and night vision capabilities. Wireless transmitters with military-grade encryption. Motion sensors that could distinguish between human movement and environmental changes. Enough surveillance equipment to turn the bank into a fishbowl. I tested each device in my garage, learning their capabilities and limitations. The cameras could run continuously for 36 hours before needing fresh batteries. The transmitters had a range of 200 yards through building materials. The motion sensors could detect movement as subtle as a pen dropping. The second phase required access, which meant returning to the scene of my destruction, but not as an employee, not as someone with legitimate business there. I needed to become invisible. The uniform arrived on a Thursday, blue coveralls with a generic cleaning company logo, the kind worn by maintenance workers across a dozen industries, a laminated ID badge with my photo and a name that wasn't mine, a clipboard with official-looking forms that would pass casual inspection. I visited the bank on Friday evening, just after closing. The security system recognized my key card. Former employees retained access for 72 hours to accommodate final paperwork and equipment returns, an oversight in the system that Kellerman had probably forgotten about in his eagerness to see me destroyed. The branch was empty except for the night security guard, an elderly man named Frank who'd worked there longer than anyone could remember. He glanced up from his crossword puzzle as I entered, nodded at my coveralls and clipboard, and returned to his puzzle. To him, I was just another faceless worker performing some routine maintenance task. I made my way through the bank with practiced efficiency, checking vents and light fixtures like a man conducting a legitimate inspection. The cameras were positioned exactly where my reconnaissance had indicated. Blind spots existed in the expected locations. The security system was a generation older than current standards, with limitations I'd researched extensively. The first device went into the break room, tucked behind the coffee machine where its lens had a clear view of the employee schedule board and time clock. Kellerman often checked the schedule during his evening visits, marking changes that would affect his activities. The second camera required more careful placement. Kellerman's office had 3 security cameras, but their positioning created a small blind spot near the window, a space approximately 18 inches wide where someone could stand without being recorded. The gap existed because the cameras were positioned to monitor the safe and desk, not the casual conversation area near the window. I installed the device inside the window frame, its lens so small it looked like a decorative screw head. From this position, it could capture everything that happened in the office, including the area behind Kellerman's desk where the important safe was located. The most critical placement came last. The vault entrance had its own security system, separate from the main branch cameras. But the hallway leading to the vault passed through a maintenance area that housed the building's HVAC equipment, a space that was regularly accessed by service workers, but rarely monitored by security personnel. I mounted the final camera inside an air vent, its lens aimed down the hallway with perfect clarity to the vault entrance. Anyone approaching or leaving the vault would be captured in high-definition detail. The entire installation took 47 minutes. I signed Frank's maintenance log with an illegible scrawl, nodded goodbye, and walked out the front door. Phase 2 was complete. Phase 3 began with waiting. The cameras transmitted continuously to a secure server I'd established in my basement, building a comprehensive record of bank operations. Every employee interaction, every security protocol, every deviation from standard procedure. For the first week, the footage was routine. Tellers arriving for their shifts, customers conducting normal business, managers following predictable schedules. Kellerman appeared in the recordings exactly as expected, reviewing reports and conducting meetings with the self-importance of a man convinced of his own authority. But on Tuesday evening, everything changed. Kellerman's car appeared in the parking lot at 8:17 p.m., 3 minutes later than his usual schedule. He entered through the employee entrance, disabling the alarm system with codes that should have required authorization from corporate security. The night guard was nowhere to be seen. His shift ended at 8 p.m., leaving Kellerman alone in the building. The vault camera captured him approaching the entrance at 8:23 p.m. He moved with the confidence of routine, someone who'd performed this ritual many times before. The vault door required 2 keys and a combination that was changed weekly according to corporate protocol. Kellerman had both keys. He knew the combination. Inside the vault, my hidden camera revealed the truth I'd suspected, but couldn't prove. Kellerman didn't just have access to the bank's money. He was systematically stealing it. Not the clumsy grab-and-run theft of a desperate amateur, but the sophisticated embezzlement scheme of someone who understood exactly how banking systems worked and where their weaknesses lay. He removed cash from specific bundles, amounts carefully calculated to fall below daily audit thresholds. He altered computer records to reflect false deposits, creating phantom transactions that would balance the books temporarily. He manipulated the reconciliation reports to hide the discrepancies until quarterly reviews, then blamed the errors on teller mistakes or system glitches. The missing $4,000 that had triggered my firing wasn't stolen by him. It was planted evidence. Money he'd taken weeks earlier, held aside, then deliberately left in my cash drawer during that 43-second window when my body blocked the security camera. A perfect setup that required access to cash reserves, security footage timing, and administrative privileges that only a manager possessed. Over the following weeks, I documented every aspect of Kellerman's operation: his theft patterns, his security evasion methods, his record manipulation techniques. The man had stolen over $37,000 across 6 months, using a system so sophisticated it would have remained undetected for years if he hadn't needed a scapegoat to cover his tracks. But documentation alone wasn't enough. I needed irrefutable proof that would destroy him completely, proof that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. I needed to catch him in the act with evidence so overwhelming that no lawyer, no corporate bureaucrat, no sympathetic colleague could save him. The opportunity came during the 4th week of surveillance. Kellerman's pattern had been consistent: Tuesday and Thursday evening visits, 90 minutes each session, identical theft amounts. But the upcoming Friday was different. A federal audit was scheduled for the following Monday, which meant Kellerman would need to balance his books before the weekend. That required a larger theft than usual. Enough money to cover the accumulated discrepancies and create a buffer for future operations. He would need to spend more time in the vault, take more risks, leave more evidence. I spent Thursday night preparing for the final phase. Fresh batteries for every camera, backup recording devices positioned around the bank's perimeter, a comprehensive timeline documenting every previous theft, correlated with security footage and financial records, phone numbers for the FBI Financial Crimes Division, the State Banking Commission, and 3 investigative journalists who specialized in corporate fraud. Friday evening, I positioned myself in the parking lot across from the bank. Hidden in my car with a clear view of the employee entrance, I watched Kellerman arrive at 8:21 p.m. He moved with the same arrogant confidence, unaware that every step was being recorded by multiple cameras. The vault footage showed him entering at 8:29 p.m. But tonight, something was different. Instead of his usual methodical approach, Kellerman moved with urgency. He removed cash from 6 different bundles, amounts much larger than his typical theft. He spent over 20 minutes manipulating computer records, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he created false transactions and altered reconciliation reports. At 9:47 p.m., he made his fatal mistake. In his haste to complete the larger theft, Kellerman forgot to reposition one of the cash bundles properly. The discrepancy was small. A bundle that should have contained $50,000 but now held only $42,000. Under normal circumstances, the error might not be discovered for weeks, but the federal audit on Monday would catch it immediately. Kellerman realized his mistake at 9:51 p.m. The camera captured the moment of recognition, the flash of panic across his face as he understood the implications. He returned to the cash bundle, attempting to rearrange the bills to hide the shortfall. But the audit procedures were too rigorous. There was no way to hide $8,000 in missing currency. That's when he made his second, more devastating mistake. Instead of accepting the inevitable exposure, Kellerman decided to create another scapegoat. He removed an additional $12,000 from the vault, money he would plant in someone else's workspace before the audit. The night janitor's cart, a secretary's desk drawer, somewhere that would deflect attention from his own activities. But in his panic, he'd forgotten the most basic rule of theft: never take more than you can replace. The additional $12,000 pushed his total theft for the evening to $20,000, an amount too large to hide through his usual manipulation techniques. I had everything I needed. The revenge I'd planned was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of confronting Kellerman directly or exposing him to bank security, I would let the federal audit proceed as scheduled. The missing money would be discovered, triggering an immediate investigation. And when that investigation began, I would provide the authorities with 6 weeks of comprehensive video evidence showing exactly who was responsible. But first, I wanted Kellerman to know that his world was ending. Monday morning arrived with crystalline clarity. I dressed in my best suit, the one I'd worn to job interviews that I'd never intended to complete. I drove to the bank at 9:30 a.m., timing my arrival to coincide with the federal auditor's scheduled review. The parking lot was busier than usual. Government vehicles with official plates occupied the prime spaces near the entrance. Men and women in conservative suits moved through the bank with the focused intensity of investigators who'd found something interesting. I walked through the front door like any other customer, took a number from the dispenser, and sat in the waiting area with a clear view of Kellerman's office. The man looked haggard, his usual composure cracked by the stress of maintaining innocence, while federal agents examined his carefully constructed fraud. At 10:15 a.m., I approached the customer service desk and asked to speak with the bank manager regarding my recent termination. The request was relayed to Kellerman's office, where I could see him through the glass partition. His face went white when he saw me. He emerged from his office with forced professionalism, gesturing for me to join him in a small conference room away from the main floor, away from the federal agents, away from witnesses. Inside the conference room, Kellerman closed the door and turned to face me. His confidence was gone, replaced by the desperate cunning of a cornered animal. He began speaking in low, urgent tones about misunderstandings and second chances, about how valuable employees like me deserved another opportunity, about how the bank was always willing to reconsider hasty decisions. I let him talk for exactly 90 seconds. Then I placed a single photograph on the conference table between us. The image was crystal clear. Kellerman in the vault, his hands inside a cash bundle, the timestamp showing 9:34 p.m. from the previous Friday. His face was perfectly visible, his actions unmistakable. There was no possible explanation except theft. Kellerman stared at the photograph like a man watching his own execution. His mouth opened and closed silently, his brain racing through impossible calculations. How had I obtained the image? Who else had seen it? What did I want? I placed a second photograph on the table. Kellerman at his computer, altering financial records. Then a third. Kellerman removing cash from 6 different bundles. Then a fourth, fifth, sixth. A comprehensive gallery of his crimes, documented with the precision of a federal investigation. The color drained from his face completely. His hands trembled as he reached for the photographs, as if touching them might make them disappear. But they were real, undeniable, devastating. I placed one final item on the table, a flash drive containing 6 weeks of complete surveillance footage. Every theft, every manipulation, every moment of criminal activity captured in high-definition clarity. Enough evidence to guarantee federal prosecution and decades in prison. Kellerman looked up at me with the desperate eyes of a man watching his entire world collapse. He began speaking again, faster now, about deals and arrangements and mutual benefit, about how 2 intelligent men could find a solution that worked for everyone. I stood up without saying a word, walked to the conference room door and opened it. In the hallway, federal agents were examining the bank's computer systems, following digital trails that would lead them inevitably to Kellerman's fraud. They would find the evidence soon enough, but I wasn't going to wait for their bureaucratic timeline. I returned to the waiting area and took out my phone. 3 calls to make. The first was to Agent Sarah Chen of the FBI Financial Crimes Division, a woman whose direct number I'd obtained through careful research, whose reputation for prosecuting white-collar criminals was legendary. I informed her that I had evidence of systematic embezzlement at Metro Community Bank, evidence that included video documentation of theft in progress. She asked me to remain at the bank until agents could arrive to collect the material. The second call was to the State Banking Commission's fraud hotline. I provided them with the same information, ensuring that both federal and state agencies would be investigating Kellerman's activities. Redundancy was important. One investigation could be influenced or delayed, but two simultaneous investigations would be impossible to stop. The third call was to Channel 7's investigative reporting team, specifically to Rebecca Martinez, a journalist who'd built her career exposing corporate corruption. I offered her exclusive access to surveillance footage showing a bank manager stealing customer deposits. She would arrive with a camera crew within the hour. By 11:30 a.m., the bank was swarming with federal agents, state investigators, and news crews. Kellerman's office had been sealed as a crime scene. His computer was being analyzed by digital forensics specialists. His personal files were being examined for additional evidence of fraud. And Kellerman himself was being read his rights in the parking lot, his hands cuffed behind his back as cameras recorded every moment of his humiliation. I watched from my car as they loaded him into the federal vehicle. Our eyes met for a brief moment through the window, and I saw in his face the complete understanding of what had happened. He knew who had destroyed him. He knew how thoroughly his life had been dismantled. He knew that his own arrogance and greed had provided the weapons for his destruction. The news broke on the evening broadcast. Rebecca Martinez's investigation revealed the full scope of Kellerman's embezzlement scheme, including the fraudulent termination of an honest employee who discovered the initial evidence of theft. The footage was damning, clear, comprehensive, and impossible to deny. The bank's corporate office issued a statement within hours. Kellerman was terminated immediately, his pension and benefits forfeited. Criminal charges would be pursued to the full extent of the law. A full audit of branch operations would be conducted to ensure no other irregularities existed. Most importantly, they offered me my job back, with a promotion, and a substantial settlement for wrongful termination. I declined their offer. Instead, I accepted a position with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Agent Chen had been impressed by the quality of my surveillance work and the thoroughness of my investigation. They needed people who understood how banking systems worked and how they could be exploited. People who could think like criminals while maintaining the integrity to catch them. The irony was perfect. Kellerman's attempt to destroy my career had instead launched me into something far better than I'd ever imagined possible. 3 months later, I sat in a federal courtroom watching Kellerman's sentencing hearing. His lawyer had negotiated a plea agreement, but the evidence was so overwhelming that the judge imposed the maximum sentence allowed under federal guidelines. 15 years in prison, full restitution of stolen funds, and lifetime prohibition from working in financial services. Kellerman looked broken as they led him away. The arrogant manager who destroyed my life with such casual cruelty had been reduced to a hollow shell of a man, his future measured in years behind bars rather than corner office promotions. But the most satisfying moment came 3 weeks after his sentencing. A letter arrived at my new FBI office, forwarded from my old address. The return address showed a federal prison in Ohio. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 4 words written in Kellerman's careful handwriting. "I know it was you." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my desk drawer, next to the commendation I'd received from my work on the Metro Community Bank case. Some trophies are worth keeping. The best revenge, I'd learned, isn't hot anger or impulsive destruction. It's the cold patience to let a criminal destroy himself while you document every moment of his downfall. It's the satisfaction of watching justice work exactly as it should when provided with irrefutable evidence. It's the knowledge that sometimes the good guys really do win. They just need to be smarter, more careful, and more ruthless than the bad guys who think they're untouchable. Douglas Kellerman thought he could frame an innocent man and walk away clean. Instead, he'd given that man the motivation to become his most dedicated enemy, armed with the very surveillance technology that banks use to protect themselves from thieves. The only thing better than proving your innocence is proving someone else's guilt so thoroughly that they spend the next decade and a half contemplating their mistakes from behind bars. Every morning when I put on my federal agent badge, I remember that Tuesday when Kellerman called me into his office with such satisfied confidence. He'd expected to see me broken, humiliated, grateful for any mercy he might offer. Instead, he'd created the architect of his own destruction. And that, I thought as I filed his prison letter away, was exactly the kind of poetic justice that made this job worthwhile.